Back in 2003, my husband Ben and we thought we had found our forever home on this quiet piece of land in Lamar, Arkansas. It was a complete dream come true, until it wasn't. We quickly found out we weren't the only ones living in the house. It started with little things, like whispers in the dark and objects moving when nobody was there, but it grew into something terrifying that none of us could have prepared for. This is the true story of our haunting, and the tragedy that came after, that would change our lives forever. Every family has a picture in their head of the perfect place to live. For Ben and me, that picture was filled with the sound of our kids laughing and just the peace and quiet of the countryside. In the fall of 2003, we were a young family and we were growing. We had 3 kids. Our oldest, Tori, was about 10 or 11 at the time. Our son Bridger was 5. And then we had our baby, Jackson, who was just 8 months old. The house we were in was starting to feel really cramped, just bursting with the energy of 3 little kids. We were just kind of looking to find a bigger place, something a little nicer with more room and a big yard where they could all run free. Ben was working as a nurse, a lot of times on the graveyard shift, and he was going to school too. He was so dedicated to providing for us. And my world was our kids. Our search for a home had been pretty frustrating, honestly. Just a lot of dead ends. But then, I heard about a property in my old hometown of Lamar. I have always been interested in old historical houses. I just loved the idea of a house having a past, with stories in its walls. So, when Ben and I drove out to see the house on Cabin Creek Road, I was so excited. I remember rounding this sharp curve in the road and seeing a field with this funny cow-themed mailbox, and my heart just started pounding. And then I saw it. There she stood, just like I would describe her later, tall and proud. It was this beautiful 2-story colonial home, painted white, and it looked like it had been standing there forever, just watching the world go by. We were told it was built in the 1800s and was nestled in this grove of huge, ancient oak and pecan trees. Their branches seemed to just curl around the house, almost protectively. The October sun was shining through the fall leaves, and it seemed to point right at the house, like it was saying, "There she is, Her Majesty." It was perfect, more than perfect. It seemed like it was pulled right out of our dreams. It was supposed to be historically significant to the area, and we were told it had once served as the original stagecoach stop in Lamar. It had land, it had character, and it had the space we needed so badly. And the location was great, right between Ben's work and his school. We just felt like it was the right place. We had found it. This was where we were going to build our future. We signed the papers and got ready to move. For a house its age, it seemed to be in really good shape. As we started moving all our stuff in, we were just so excited that we didn't pay much attention to the little odd things. But there was one thing we found that was pretty unsettling. In one of the upstairs rooms, the one that was going to be for our 5-year-old Bridger, there was a fireplace. The opening was all boarded up, and spray-painted across the boards was this crude, black pentagram. And there were bits of candles on the floor near it. Looked like they had a seance or something in that room. It was jarring, a really strange thing to find in your new home. But it was also easy to explain away. It was probably just teenagers, some dumb prank. We had so much to do with the move, so we just made a practical choice. We covered it up, painted right over it, and tried not to think about it. We were a rational family, we weren't superstitious. We didn't know it then, but the house had all the time in the world. And it was already watching us. The first few weeks in that house were just a blur of unpacking and trying to get everything set up. The kids loved all the new space, and it was really starting to feel like our home. The memory of that pentagram just kind of faded away. But the house had other stories it wanted to tell. The first thing that I truly could not explain happened late one night. It was almost 2 a.m. We were finally done with the move, and I was so exhausted I was dozing in a recliner downstairs. The kids were all asleep in their new rooms, and Ben was sleeping on the couch nearby. The whole house was quiet, that deep kind of quiet you only get in the country. That's when I heard it. A really distinct sound from the stairs, just on the other side of the doorway. The pitter-patter stomp of little feet. My first thought was, of course, that it was Bridger, our 5-year-old. I was annoyed, but not scared or anything. I yelled over my shoulder at the stairs. "Get your buns back in that bed now!" I didn't hear anyone talk back or run away, but I felt a presence, like a shadow in the doorway that seemed to move away when I yelled. "It's late," I said after it. "You're 5 now, and big boys sleep in their own rooms." "Thank you." I figured that was that, and I drifted back to sleep. But a few moments later, I just got this feeling. A mother's intuition, I guess. Something didn't feel right. So I got up and went to check on the kids. I went to the boys' room first and peeked inside. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Both Bridger and baby Jackson were sound asleep, just completely peaceful. My heart started to race, and I flew down the hall to Tori's room and flipped on the light. She was in there, snoring softly, totally asleep. This cold dread just washed over me. If all 3 of our kids were in their beds, fast asleep, whose footsteps did I hear on the stairs? Whose presence did I feel in the doorway? I ran back downstairs and just collapsed on the couch next to Ben. Pulling the blanket up over my head like that could somehow protect me from what I was realizing. It was in that moment, sitting there in our dream home, that I knew with this chilling certainty. We were not alone. That one event just cracked the foundation of our new life. Soon after that, other things started happening. Ben was the next one to experience something. As a nurse working night shifts, his sleep was so important. One day, he was home trying to rest when a sound from the baby monitor woke him up. It was a baby crying, clear as day. But that was impossible. I had taken baby Jackson with me to go shopping. The house was empty except for Ben. He checked the monitor, thinking maybe it was picking up a neighbor's, but the thing was unplugged. When he told me about it later, I had to admit that I'd heard it too on other days. We would hear a baby crying from that unplugged monitor, this phantom cry that had no source. Around the same time, Bridger started having a really hard time sleeping. He was terrified of his new room, the same room where we'd found the pentagram. Night after night, he'd tell us he could hear voices, that people were talking in his room after we tucked him in. Was it just an overactive imagination? A kid being scared of a new room? Or was he hearing what we were starting to hear? The whispers had started, and we didn't know it yet, but they were about to get a whole lot louder. As the days went on, the sanctuary we were looking for in Lamar was just being taken apart, piece by piece. The weird things happening weren't just one-off incidents anymore. There was this heavy feeling in the house like we were being watched all the time. The activity started to get bolder, and it felt like it was touching every single one of us. For the kids, the house was becoming scary. Bridger's experiences in his room got worse. It wasn't just voices anymore. His electronic toys would turn on by themselves in the middle of the night, their little tinny songs suddenly breaking the silence and scaring him awake. He would tell us about it, and his face was just filled with fear and confusion. It really seemed like he was the main target. Tori, our oldest, saw the toys go on and off by themselves too, so she knew her little brother wasn't making it up. My own sense of dread just grew every day. The phantom footsteps on the stairs became a pretty common thing, a sound I'd hear when everyone else was asleep, just this lonely, terrifying reminder that we weren't alone. Ben and I also started to hear this new, bizarre sound, a thump thump thump, like a rubber ball was bouncing down the main staircase, always late at night. We'd run out to look, and there was never anything there. Whatever was in the house, it felt intelligent. We would find dimes in the weirdest places, like in our shoes or even in our bed, which was just freaking us out. Doors would slam shut down empty hallways. The kitchen cabinets would be wide open after we knew we had closed them. And the air in the house just felt heavy, oppressive. We noticed that batteries in our cameras and toys would drain in just minutes, way faster than they should. Even our dog knew something was wrong. He'd just start barking like crazy at thin air, with his hackles up, staring at something in the room that none of us could see. It was all taking a huge toll. I remember just feeling constantly unnerved. I never felt like we were in physical danger, but it was just unnerving. They're keeping my kids up, like they're not getting sleep, I'm not getting sleep, and so we were always exhausted. That stress just started to wear on everyone. The house wasn't a sanctuary anymore. It was the source of all our anxiety. The real turning point, the moment that made us think this was something more sinister, came from a place I never would have expected. One day, I was at the local Walmart just getting groceries. As I walked in, the greeter at the door, a woman I'd never seen before, called out my name. "Hey, are you Jamie?" she asked. I was surprised, but I said I was. "Do you live in that house in Lamar?" "Yeah," I said, wondering how she knew. Then her whole expression changed, and she said something that sent a chill right through me. "My family used to live in that house. I lived there when I was a kid." She paused for a second, and then she said, "Yeah, it's haunted." I was just standing there, shocked. She went on to tell me the story her family had passed down. She said that sometime back in the 1800s, a young boy had fallen to his death from one of the second-story windows, the very window in what was now Bridger's room. She said his spirit was known to be in the house, but that he was harmless. But then she told me that since her family had lived there, something else had shown up. Something new. A demon. Hearing that was a profound shock. It was somebody else, a total stranger, confirming everything we were going through. It wasn't just in our heads. The house had a reputation. And worse, it introduced this terrifying idea that we might be dealing with two things: the ghost of a little boy and something much older and darker. The greeter's story just cast everything we'd experienced in this new, horrible light. The crying on the baby monitor, the voices in Bridger's room. Was that the little boy? But what about the heavy feeling, that oppressive energy? Was that the other thing? At that point, I was convinced. Any of the little things could be explained away by wind or, an old house. But after that, I was like, no, there's something not right. Our fear had turned into real terror. We knew we couldn't handle this by ourselves anymore. We needed help. So, I wrote an article for a local paper, just detailing everything that was happening to our family. It didn't take long for our plea to be answered. A group called the Central Arkansas Society for Paranormal Research, or CSPR, saw the article and contacted us. They were a team of paranormal investigators who offered to come to the house, investigate, and do a spiritual cleansing. We set a date for later that month. For the first time in a long time, we felt a little bit of hope. We thought we were finally taking a step toward getting our home back. We had no idea that we were about to provoke the darkness in those walls, and that before the investigators could even get there. A real-world tragedy was waiting for us just around the corner. When the investigators from CSPR arrived, it felt like a huge moment for us. Our private nightmare was about to be seen by professionals, and we were so hopeful they could make it stop. The team, a husband, wife, and their daughter, seemed confident. They told us they had done cleansings before and thought they could help the spirit move on with prayer. But our house was different. The wife of the team later told us that the moment they stepped inside, the atmosphere hit them like a physical wall. She said she immediately felt this dark, coiling presence, like something was lurking in the corners, just watching them. They decided to do an investigation before trying the cleansing. As they set up their equipment, it was like the house came alive. The activity, which was usually hit or miss, became constant. They told us they captured what they called EVPs, or electronic voice phenomena, voices on their audio recorders that you couldn't hear in the moment. The voices were chilling. They gave the entity a name. It called itself Seth. Just hearing a name, Seth, was a shock. It made the terror feel real, like it had an identity. And it wasn't the ghost of the little boy we'd been told about. This was something else. As the investigation went on, Seth, or whatever it was, seemed to get more aggressive. The team felt cold spots, and they told us they were recording strange lights on their cameras. But the scariest part was physical. As the investigators walked through the house, they said they felt this heavy force pushing against them, like the air itself was trying to shove them out. It was a clear message that they weren't welcome there. The entity wasn't just whispering anymore. It was getting hostile. Faced with this, the team knew they had to do the cleansing right away. They gathered our family and explained they'd use Christian prayers and Native American traditions, burning sage to clear out the space. As the husband moved through the house with the smoking sage, Reciting prayers, the house fought back. The whole house turned like ice cold. Felt just evil, like it just felt horrible. We never felt that pressing, malicious feeling until after the investigation. Seth was not some lost spirit. It felt like a powerful, territorial force that had claimed our house and saw all of us as trespassers. One of the most terrifying moments happened with Bridger. I was at the computer with a friend when Bridger came downstairs. He just stood next to me, completely unresponsive, with his eyes glazed over like he was in a trance. I thought he was sleepwalking and I kept trying to get his attention, calling his name. Suddenly, he threw his head back and just started laughing. And it wasn't his laugh. It was this deep, mocking, horrible sound. He was just standing there, laughing in my face with a voice that was not his own. I was shaking him and yelling his name, and after a few seconds, he finally snapped out of it and had no memory of what just happened. That moment, along with what the investigators were feeling, confirmed our worst fear. This thing wasn't just haunting our house. It was trying to get to us, to our kids. By the end of the night, it was obvious the cleansing had failed. The investigators had been brave, but Seth was too strong. In fact, trying to get rid of it seemed to have just made it angrier. The team was shaken. They told us that we might not have any other choice but to leave the house. When they left, we were just overcome with terror and hopelessness. That little bit of hope we had was gone, replaced by the reality that we were trapped. We had provoked a demon, and now it was more active and angry than ever. We were left to face the wrath of Seth, all alone in the home that was supposed to be our sanctuary. In the days after the failed cleansing, the house was just thick with dread. The activity didn't calm down. It got worse. We were living on a knife's edge, completely exhausted and scared. That feeling of being physically drained got so much worse, and we all had headaches and just felt sick all the time. Felt like the house was feeding on our fear. Sleep didn't help because we were all having nightmares. The decision to leave wasn't a question of if, but how. The reality of moving a family of 5 is huge, but it was becoming so clear that our safety depended on it. We felt trapped, not just by this thing in our house, but by our life. It was during this time, just days after the investigation had stirred everything up, that our nightmare went from paranormal to a real-world tragedy. It was sudden, and it would forever blur the line between the haunting and the awful luck that seemed to follow us. I had just picked the kids up from school. We were in our minivan, and they were doing construction on the road at the time, and one of the barrels was out of place, right in our lane. I reacted on instinct. I went to dodge it, and I just overcorrected, and we ended up flipping several times. Time just slowed down. It was violent and terrifying. Sometime in that process, Tori was ejected from the van, and the van rolled over on top of her, and she was pinned. The scene after was just pure horror. Emergency services rushed there, and our family was just shattered. The accident caused catastrophic injuries. Tori was trapped, and we were all rushed to the hospital, not knowing what was going to happen. Tori spent 10 days in the ICU, fighting for her life. The trauma of that day was so deep, a wound that was so much worse than anything we had dealt with in the house. I've thought about that accident so many times. I don't think the house caused the wreck. I just think we were under so much stress and so sleep-deprived, and just our whole home life was just out of whack. I was so jumpy from everything that I think it might have contributed to me overcorrecting. I didn't feel something grab the wheel, but the psychological toll the house had taken on me was undeniable. The house may not have driven the car off the road, but its influence had worn the driver down to the breaking point. That crash was the final, devastating blow. The fight for our home was nothing compared to the fight for our lives. The darkness that started with whispers had now followed us out onto the road, and it left real devastation behind. We knew then we had to escape that house, no matter what it took. Our family's story is a lot, I know. It's this intersection of paranormal terror and real-life tragedy, and it raises a question that still bothers me. What would you do if your own home turned against you? If you've ever had an experience like this, something you just couldn't explain, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Your story matters, and it helps to know you're not alone in wondering about these things. The car accident was just this brutal end to that chapter of our lives. As we all focused on recovering, physically and emotionally, the house on Cabin Creek Road was always in the back of my mind. The decision was made. We had to get away. As soon as we could, Ben and I decided to leave the house behind. We couldn't sell it, not with its history, so we decided to rent it out and put as much distance as we could between us and that place. We moved out of state, really hoping that would be enough to leave the memories and the entity behind. Our story, though, got out, and it eventually caught the attention of the producers for the Discovery Channel show A Haunting. In January of 2007, almost 4 years after we first moved in, our family found ourselves reliving every terrifying moment for the cameras. For 12 hours, Ben, myself, Tori, and Bridger sat for interviews for the episode they called Where Evil Lurks. It was grueling. We talked about everything from our hopes when we moved in, to the first weird sounds, the CSPR investigation, and the car wreck. It brought our private nightmare to a national audience. Life after the house has been a long road. We were all deeply scarred, not just by the paranormal stuff, but by the very real trauma of the accident. It's an experience that I know I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. And what happened to the house itself is another chilling part of the story. We rented it out for a while, and I think we went through 3 different renters who all eventually moved out. The house just seemed to not let anyone live there in peace. Eventually, we were in a tough spot financially, and in September of 2007, we made a decision that I know sounds crazy to some people. We moved back in. I remember writing about it, saying I was determined to fill the home with good vibes and rely on our faith to protect us. It's 2 a.m. and the house has been quiet for the most part, I wrote. But that quiet didn't last. The activity, it seemed, was just waiting for us. In the years since, I've tried to use our experience to help others. I co-host a podcast called The Unexplained Archives, where I share our story and listen to others, trying to build a community for people who have been through things they can't explain. Talking about it has helped a lot of people, but it's also brought out skeptics, including some people who lived in the house after us who claim they never experienced a thing. And I can't explain that. I can only tell you what happened to my family. Our story is a mix of so many things: hope, terror, tragedy, and somehow resilience. We went looking for a dream, and what we believe we found was a demon. We fought for our home, and then we had to fight for our lives. We escaped, but the memories and the trauma, they linger. That house in Lamar, Arkansas, is still standing. Tucked away in those ancient trees, it's holding on to its secrets. For our family, it wasn't a home. It felt like a trap that was set long before we ever drove up that driveway. We walked right into a fight that wasn't ours, against something that did not want to leave. Our experience is a terrifying reminder of how thin that veil between our world and whatever is next can be. It makes you confront a really uncomfortable idea. That evil isn't just a concept, but something real that can attach itself to a place, just waiting for the next family to come along. We survived our encounter with the darkness we were told was named Seth. But we didn't get away clean. The scars from our time in that house, both the ones you can see and the ones you can't, changed our lives forever. The question that's left, the one that still haunts me, is what was really in that house? Was it truly a demon or something else? And maybe the most unsettling question of all is it still there, waiting in the quiet for the next family to move in? The haunting of my family is one of the most documented and terrifying experiences. And if our story connected with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into true paranormal stories. And I have to ask you, after hearing everything my family went through, would you be brave enough to spend a single night in that house? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, stay safe and be careful of the history that might be living in the walls around you.